Okay, I'm going to start with this little thin strip that goes right to here. So I'm going to wet it a little bit. Okay. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that clean blue. I'm picking from this area. Pull it down, and let's see. Let's pick up a little bit. Let's wet this some. And right in this area, it's a purple color. And then right below that is a little bit of a pink color. So I'm just going to let those both kind of blend in together. And then I'm going to avoid this area. I'm going to come over and I'm going to pick up some more. Some more of the purple. And then a little bit, ooh, that was a lot of red. Okay, let's smooth that out. Okay, and then we'll come back and I'll fill in some details. A little bit more red right in this area. And of course, pull out a few little highlights here and there. Okay, so we've got that little spot. It's not going to take much more except for a couple things here and there. So honestly, these petals are going to be much easier than those two ones were down there. Those were just, they were pretty intense. Okay, so why we've got that drying, let's go ahead and I'm going to try this a different way. Hopefully it'll make it so that we're not having to stop and dry so much and pull away from the area. I'm just going to go ahead and start with my color on the dry paper, and then I'm going to switch. Now I'm going to come over here and pick up some blue. And that's a good way to do it too, so it's blending in nicely. But you can do it either way. Okay, now water. I'm just pulling those colors down. And now let's pick one of the purples right here in the middle, and then back to some pink. Pulling this color down. Now back to some of the purple. And then right next to it. Now back to some pink. And more of the purple. Now some water, and let's soften that edge a bit. Pink. Water. Purple again. I think this is going to be the best way to approach all of these, because we've got purples, we've got pinks. Instead of trying to paint and dry and paint and dry, let's just get it on there. Okay, now let's pick up a little bit more of the red. And how about a little bit of the blue? Okay. now we'll smooth that out. Perfect, right along that edge. And now we can come back over here to the blues. Actually, we'll pick up some purples. Lots of light blues. Okay, now more pink. Let's go back up to this area, add in a little bit more pink. And let's get a little bit more pink right over in this area, because remember it's going to lighten as it dries. And, okay. A little bit more right there. Now we have a little bit of a line going through there, so that's perfect. Okay, now let's continue on along this side. A little bit of purple right along this area. It's actually much easier when things are smaller and a little bit more compartmentalized than doing really, really big areas, I think. And adding a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red. I'll be honest with you, I always struggle with the bigger areas. Even for me, that was challenging. That's good though. I mean, you know, we don't want things to be boring by any means. Okay, let's get a little bit more purple right up in here. And then above that, some of the pink. Oh, and then let's get a little bit of purple, and let's get in right up at the top here. Where the tip kind of turns around. And now we can come back over here to this area and pull these strokes down. And add a little bit of red to that. All the way down. A little bit more red. Okay, and then we'll let all that dry. And we'll come back. And we'll fill in those pinks a little bit more, like right here. Need it to be a little bit more pink. And a little bit more yellow right in here. Okay, let's get that dry, and then we'll come in and we'll do in between, and then we'll add a little bit darker values to those areas and get that little spot finished. Okay, I'm gonna turn this a little bit, and I've got my double lot, so I'm just gonna come over here and pick, see, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said, so look, this little area is a little purple, a little bit, there's all these different tiny mixtures, microscopic mixtures going on, and I always like to pull from all of these different areas. Okay, let's pick now. See, I want to pick up right from that little area. It's a little bit more purple, so I'm always switching colors up. Purples, reds. I'm still working on the dry paper. Oh, let's go back to some blues. A few more blues. And then I'm going to wet it a little bit and let it kind of blend together. And of course I probably have, and I'll be taking my little scrubber brush and just pulling out little highlights here and there. I'm just gonna stop and we're gonna get this finished. Then I can go back and do little stuff like that. A little bit more blue. A little bit of water. And let's get a little bit more of the red. Ooh, that was a little bit too much. I'm going to use a little bit more blue. And then back to some red. Okay, and maybe a little bit more purple right up in this area. Oops, yikes. Okay, let's smooth that out a bit. Okay. Just want to get a little bit more red in there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, more red, and I'm going to blend it right back into this little area. I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow, a little bit more red. And then I'm going to smooth it out. Now I'm going to come over here and get some purple and let it blend in. I'm going to add just a few little stripes kind of coming through this area. Because if you notice that shadow, there's a shadow and it's going to go all the way through. Okay, so now, let's see, let's go to my 0 and let's go ahead and let's start off with a little bit of yellow up in this area and then a little bit of the rose. Let's add some more. water here. Okay. I'm adding some water. A little bit more water. Need a little bit more yellow. Okay, now we need a little bit of a reddish purple here. A little more. Excellent, covered up a little bit of that. That little, there's a little vein going right through there. Okay, there we go. I'll just leave that. Okay, a little bit more red. Actually, I'm not going to try to be painting between those. It's just too hard. I'm just going to do like I did down there. It's just too difficult. I think if it was a bigger painting, it wouldn't be as hard. So let me go to my number 2. I've got a couple of little bits of paper. Okay, now I'm going to get to yellow, because you see how right down in this area it's kind of green. Okay. Now back to the red. Just blending them together. And then right on into the area that we just painted. Yeah, this is much easier to just paint over the whole thing. And we'll blend these areas together. Okay, now let's add in back in a little bit of the yellow. Push it up and out. And then I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of the blue, and it's kind of hard to see right there. Now the yellow again, and we're just going to blend those in. And I'm going to go right over the green. And now I'm going to get, what am I going to use? I'm going to use my 2-aught so I can get some thicker yellow. Go right up against this edge with a little bit of the blue. And that's actually going to go all the way up. And in fact, I'm going to use some blue here. A little bit more blue. And now let's go back to some red. And back to some blue. See how that made that darker edge? A little bit more yellow because we're going to darken this whole area right here. Okay, and then we're going to let that dry. So let's zoom out a bit. Let's pull this away. We're looking better. Okay, so we're gonna get, before, let's see, let's zoom back in. Okay, before, let's add in lots of yellow. I'm just smoothing it all out. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this dried, and then we'll come back and we'll put some details in it. Okay, I'm going to deepen the color just a little bit. Just right on the dry paper. Color's really dark right along this edge. Okay, now I'm going to get some more of the purple, and here's a good example of why you want to be careful. That's the area that I tried to scrub out a little bit of when I had it masked. What had happened was a little tiny bit got through and I wasn't paying attention. So I tried to scrub it out. Oh, let's refocus this. So yeah, that was not good. So, there's always, you're going to have little problems here and there. That was one of them. I've had more than my share on this one. Okay, now I'm going to just blend these out a little bit. Okay, so we've got a darker area there. Let's pull a little bit of that color down into here. Maybe a little bit more blue right along this side and some red. Okay, so then I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll pull out some highlights. But first I'm going to take a little bit of this orange and a little bit of the purple. Right down along there, and a little bit more purple. Right along the edge of this, of the leaf. Okay, a little bit more blue. And let's spray my yellow. Okay. Just added some thicker yellow and just up that saturation just a bit, and then I'm going to be very careful about how much is in there. And let's come, ooh, now let's clean that up. There we go. Okay. I'm going to take some of that red and go right along this edge. I'm going to make it darker. And put a little bit of water. Okay. And then that helps make it look like it's going behind. And then let's put just a little bit of purple in there. Okay, now we're going to let that dry. And so while that's drying, let's go ahead. Okay, let's clean up some of my yellow, clean my brush, pull out some nice clean yellow. There's still a little bit of color right along the side, so let's make sure we get that up. Okay, and then so we've darkened it there. Actually, that line is a little bit farther down, isn't it? It goes like that. Okay, now water, and I'm smoothing all that out. Let's put a tiny bit of purple in there to just darken it a little bit more. And then a little bit of the purple up here. And we're going to go right across. And more water. More water. More water. Okay. All right, there we go. So that's, okay. We're going to leave that and we're going to let it dry so that we can pull out some of those highlights. Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to get some of those veins out. Okay. These brushes don't do well for very, very dark staining colors, especially in light values, but oh, they work so great for this kind of stuff. And it helps if you hold them up almost straight up and down, perpendicular. It helps a little tiny bit. Okay, now I'm going to put that one down, and I'm going to pick up my oil scrubber, because these are, again, these are light valued. So the scrubber, this harder scrubber can get these lighter colors to come through a little bit better. Okay, so let's put that down, and let's go ahead and do this other. This one right here is also a very dark valued area. So we're going to do the same thing. And this time I'm going to pick up a little bit of the red, and I'm going to make it very watery instead of putting down the water first. So we've done so many, or not so many, but we've already done a couple layers on that. So let's go ahead and, okay, let's pick up some of the purple. And plus it's a tiny area. And we're going to go right over this front one. Now I'm going to come over here and let's pick up some of that yellow and green in there. And let's wet it a little bit. Oh, I see some more yellow. We want a real nice watery mixture. And now I'm going to get some red and put some red right on top of that. And I'm going to get right up next to the edge there. I'm going to put that down, and I'm going to get my number 2 so I can get into this tiny area. Let's get all the way up in there. Let's get some more red, and let's also clean up right there so I can have some fresh, clean red. And we're going to do the same thing, just going to build up that color. And of course the purple right there. And again with the blue. Oop, forgot this little area right here, actually. Yeah. A little bit of yellow. And somehow, I don't know how I did that. Let's see if we can't lift that a little bit. Maybe I dropped my brush. Let's try to lift up that little blue line. Okay, I need to go back to my red and I need to even out these washes. And now we go to the blue. And then back to red. Okay, now that's got to dry. And actually, let's soften this edge a little bit because it's moving over into this area. Back, let's go right along here. Now you can see everything's still pretty glossy. So I'm not worrying about not worried about any blossoming. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. Let's just build it up with a little bit of water and blue. Just drop the blue in there and drop some red in there. The only place that it's a little light, but again, a scrubber brush is going to do well right there. Okay, now I'm going to pull that color back. Okay, now I'm going to dry. Okay, so I've been pretty quiet while I've painted this, and this is because this is I would consider this advanced. You know, you should watch a few more of my tutorials, some of the easier ones, to get an idea of you know, using water. So this is definitely more advanced. Anyhow, the point I wanted to make about that is sometimes when you're painting, it takes a long time before things finally start actually coming together. So you'll get that teenage look. Where nothing seems to be coming together, and then all of a sudden, everything will start coming together. And it just takes a while. And this one especially, there's so much involved. Okay, a little bit. Now I'm going to pick up some blue. And then we're going to leave that and we'll let that dry, and then I can come back in and we can define the shadow there. So little bits at a time. Okay, so this time, oh no, I'm going to stick with my my number 2. I'm just making these lines where these folds are. Now water. I want to smooth everything out. Okay, I went a little bit too far, see, because my lines are disappearing, so I can't see where I'm at. Okay, there, that helped. That helped. Okay, so now we've got to let that dry. So I can come back over here. This is pretty dry, and we can get a little bit more orange. I don't know if this is going to be the best way. And again, let's just go right over that. I keep trying to figure out a way to get those lines in there, but honestly, every time I try it that way, they just look flat, and I don't like that. So I think they're just better off being scrubbed out. Okay, now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to soften. Right over into the green, because I don't want that little edge looking cut out. Just tickling the edge. And let's add a little bit that purple so we can darken. Because there are some darker colors down there, just like there was on the side. But then, obviously, we get a little bit of yellow. And I think I'm going to have to scrub out that area a little bit to add in a little bit of that green. But what I think I can do, there we go. So you can always fix things. Okay, now I'm just moving some of that color away. So now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to add a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow there. And a little bit more. A little bit more. And then, of course, when we go to scrub out those edges, or the little, the veins, that will help. Okay, let's go ahead. Now let's smooth out over here. Now let's go ahead and dry it again. Okay, so I've got all that dried. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going around. I've already started a little tiny bit of now going around and just adding in some of these darker values right in the center here. And I cleaned my palette because it needed it. So I'm just soften this. So I'm just going to keep going back and forth between all my colors. So on this part, you may just want to watch me. I'm just going to kind of focus and concentrate. So maybe watch me and then go back. And start painting again. A little tiny bit of yellow. Let's put that back there. We've got some very dark spots of color right in here, but right now I'm just going to kind of build it up slowly. And then up top we're going to have blues, so let's get some blue. Let's get some thicker blue. And then water. You just have to be really careful with that blue because it can just really overwhelm everything. Okay, now we'll let that kind of sink in, and then we'll add the darker purples around it. Let's get some more pink. Deepening the values and colors. So now I'm just basically kind of looking around. I know we've still got this little area. Lots of water. And a little bit of yellow. So what's happening is all of those complementary colors now are really starting to show up. So greens and reds, we've got purples and yellows. So we need yellows in places to really help it stand out. Now we've got more values. And we're keeping all the lighter parts towards the outside. And of course we still have to add in, scrub out the veins. See how I'm using a lot of water. Now my brush is really loaded with water, and then I'm just very lightly adding in some color. Now I'm going back to more yellow, and then there's going to be more grays right in this area. So I'm always thinking about grays and complementary colors. So saturation, now let's go back over this area and let's drop in just a little. I think it just needs a little bit more color here. Then I'll go ahead and we'll dry it again. We'll see where we're at. I can see that we need more red here. I can see that we need more red in this area. Now I'm just adding water, making sure that it's blending well. Okay, now I'm going to come back over here, and then right over in here, we need more color. I'm going to pick up some blue so that these little areas, we're surrounding them by color. Okay, now I'm going to stop and dry, and then we'll come back and we're going to add some more detail. Okay, at this point you can see how many light layers it's taking to really start building up the values and the colors. I'm trying to focus on value, the darkest areas versus the lightest areas. Then we've got complementary colors, so we've got soft greens and reds and pinks, and then we've got blues, and we've got a few almost orangey colors. So we've got complementary colors, and we've got values, and we've got saturation. We've got some areas that aren't as bright, so these back leaves are a little bit less saturated than the leaves, or than the petals in the front. So we're just going to keep going, and I'm going to keep adding layer after layer until we finally get this finished. So I think the next lesson is going to end up being the last, and we'll really get in all these final details. And then of course we've got this little center to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this lesson, and we'll get started on the next one.